your private life
Mm-hmm.
is also very public because you're an influencer. You're talking about your story. Your account is your name.
Right.
So like I have the separation of I have my Preacher Boys bucket and then I've got my Eric bucket and my film and you've kind of put it all under this umbrella. Like
I have.
how do you first and foremost kind of separate like your public versus private life?
I have this rule that's been really helpful. And number one, I never talk about anything that I'm currently going through unless I've expressed this to either a therapist or somehow have started working on that. That way I'm not jumping into a conversation from a place of anger or resentment or somewhere where I'm just not ready to talk. And then I also have what I call is the circle of five. Some people say that the five closest people to you you're going to be that average of those five people. And while I do believe that, I usually take it a step further. And so what I say is I only have those five people where I tell them those very confidential details. And they are very selective people. They have qualities about them that I wish I had. One of them is my spiritual mentor. She's also a really good friend. One of them is really great as having family relationships.
Right.
One's more career focused, and then there's a couple more that are like more financially driven. And so I have these people in my life where I can go to, and they know the ins and outs of all the details. And sometimes they are allowed to tell me to reel it back in and get my life together. But it's been really helpful to have that perspective where they're watching all of my blind spots for me. And I just feel really encouraged every time I talk to each one of them.
Yeah. That's helpful. Because like one of the things I struggle with is, I mean, the last, and I'm sure you relate, like the last several years has been a lot of turnover with friendships, relationships, like, you know, and I find myself in a position where, you know, when it comes to leaders, especially, I have a hard time picking like who speaks into what. So I guess like, you know, in a lot of ways, we can go from one bad thing to another, or go from one cult to another, one high control group to another, one abuser to another. And like that cycle happens. Yeah. How do you go about vetting that circle of five? Because I'm at the precipice right now of going, I need to start building some of those friendships up again with new people. Yeah. But the thought of that is like,
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, I watch people very closely before I ever let them into my life anyway. Almost too much, but I watch them. I watch how they interact, not just with me, but other people. How do they treat their kids? How do they treat their family? How do they treat their coworkers? Are they gossiping about people when I'm with them? If that's the case, that's a big red flag. I'm not going to tell you anything about my life. So I watch these people very closely, and usually it's over time where I'm like, you know what? I think I can trust this person with this detail, and it's a mutual trust, you know? And it's not like I go around like looking like you will be my next person, my fifth person, you know, it just kind of happens naturally. And I really struggle with making friends to begin with. And so that's really helped me to like open my worldview too as well. Yeah.
No, I feel that way for sure. It's and there's all the layers too, I think of, you know, with having a public platform. I think you have a larger public platform than I do. Like,
I haven't.
You know, you look at your followers.
Nah.
No, but I think it is one of those things too, where like I have a lot of people that come into my inbox who know me for that. Who, it's a weird thing where people feel like they know me a lot, which they probably do, but I don't know them. So like there's an imbalance there of like, oh, they already know everything about me. Right. Now I have to build this relationship. You know?
Yeah, that can be tough. I will say none of the people that I am speaking about with the circle of five people, none of them are from social media. None of them. These are people I've met in real life. And my hopes is that if someone met me online and then say we ran into each other at a coffee shop, they would be meeting the same person.
I literally said to somebody today, I was on the phone with somebody. He's like, you sound exactly like how you sound on the podcast.
As we should, right?
Yeah. I was like, that's kind of exactly the point is like, if you meet Eric anywhere, it's Eric, not Eric, Dateline Eric trying to be on a podcast, you know?
Yeah.
But so kind of talking about the advocacy side, like, are there things that you don't talk about? Like beyond things you've gone through, like, is there things that you don't talk about just ever? And you don't have to say what they are because that defeats the purpose. But like, do you keep some things about you that nobody knows that you're like, that's just for me? Like this interest or this hobby is like purely offline.
Not necessarily hobbies. I feel like sometimes I don't realize that I'm not sharing things. Like most people have no idea that I'm obsessed with like story type video games. Like they have no idea. For example, the Life is Strange series, I could probably replay that 100 times. I'm obsessed with that, and Animal Crossing. Those aren't things that I talk about. But it's not necessarily because I'm trying to keep that. It's just because I just don't, and I haven't found a way to bring that in.
Right.
But I feel like there might be a few things that I haven't talked about, but I feel like they will be things I will eventually talk about.
Right.
So nothing that I think I'll keep to my grave or anything. No deep dark secrets like that. But yeah, I never talk about video games ever.
That would be such an easy transition to like do streaming or to talk about stuff that you talk about in that kind of format.
I would love to do that. I just haven't figured out how. So yeah.
Well, I was telling you before we hit record, like I feel like I have all these different buckets of stuff where it's like I have like my Preacher Boys bucket, which is like the trauma bucket I go into when I have to do the show. And then I have like my film bucket, which is like where I want to spend all my time. And then I have like all, you know, and that's like my personal kind of world.
Yeah.
But like yours is so much tied to like your name, you know? And I feel like I kind of been wanting to shift more into like, here's me all encompassing, but then it's also like
scary.
Yeah. It's a very weird, weird world to go into.